It is 7:30. At this time, I'd like to call to order the November 5th, 2020 regular meeting of the Fairfax County School Board. Will now come to order. Please rise as our student representative, Mr. Anabudo, lead us in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a moment of silence.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you. In order to comply with Section 2.2-3712D of the Code of Virginia, it is necessary for the board to certify that since the Fairfax County School Board convened a closed meeting on November 5th, 2020, and to the best of each member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements and only such public business matters as were identified in the motion convening the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered by the board during the closed meeting. Thank you, Ms. Corbett Sanders, for making the motion. Second. Thank you, Ms. Omesh. All in favor? We have Ms. McLaughlin, Ms. Corbett Sanders, Mr. Frisch, Ms. Omesh, Ms. Sizemore-Heiser, Ms. Marin, Ms. Pekarsky, Ms. Cohen, Ms. Tolan, Ms. Derna Kofax, and myself. Please lower your hands at this point. Tonight, the board has convened a first-ever hybrid version of a regular meeting. There are 9 board members who are in person at Luther Jackson and 3 who are joining us virtually. On behalf of the board, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the staff who have made this evening possible, Mr. Jeff Plattenberg and his wonderful design and construction staff, who with guidance from the Fairfax County Health Department are responsible for the design and installation of the PPE measures you see here at Jackson. Thank you to the incredible IT staff who are responsible for assuring that the technology pieces of this meeting are seamless and flawless. Thank you also to the rest of our team who have made this happen, our security team, our custodial team, and all of the other people who had a hand in making this evening possible. So let's please give them an official hand. This board appreciates your work very much. Agendas for today's meeting are available at the back of the auditorium. Tonight's meeting is being broadcast on Channel 99 and live streamed on the website at fcps.edu/TV/CH99. I'll now call on Mr. Anabudo for a few announcements.
Thank you, Dr. Anderson. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So November 11th, Veterans Day, is Veterans Day, 2020. Veterans Day, formerly known as Armistice Day, is the anniversary of the armistice, which was signed in the forest of Compiègne by the Allies and the Germans in 1918, ending World War I after 4 years of conflict. At 5 a.m. on Monday, November 11th, 1918, the Germans signed the armistice. An order was issued for all firing to cease, so the hostilities of the First World War ended. This day began with the laying down of arms, blowing of whistles, impromptu parades, and closing of places of business. All over the globe, there were many demonstrations. No doubt the world had never before witnessed such rejoicing. Veterans Day is observed annually in the United States in honor of all those living and dead who served in the United States Armed Forces. The school board directs school personnel to provide students with instructional activities that honor veterans and recognize the role of the military in American democracy. Many schools have special events to which they invite veterans and members of the school community on active duty military. Additionally, November 16th through the 20th, 2020 is American Education Week. American Education Week was established in 1921 by the National Education Association, or NEA, to raise public awareness of the importance of public education in America. This year's theme, Reach, Educate, Inspire, reminds all Americans of the importance of public education and offers the opportunity to celebrate public education and honor those who ensure that every child receives a quality education. As part of the observance, community leaders are invited to serve as educators for a day in order to get a glimpse at a day in the life of a school employee. American Education Week features a special observance on each day of the week, including parents, education support professionals, and substitute educators. And finally, November 16th through the 20th, 2020, is Geography Awareness Week. Established by the Presidential Proclamation more than 25 years ago, this annual public awareness program encourages citizens, young and old, to think and learn about the significance of place and how we affect and are affected by it. Too many young Americans are unable to make effective decisions, understand geospatial issues, or even recognize their impacts as global citizens. Geography Awareness Week is observed in November and promotes what geography is, why it is important, and the relevance of a geographic education in preparing citizens to understand and debate pressing social and environmental issues and problems. That is all. Thank you, Dr. Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Anabudo. The next order of business is citizen participation. Speakers are requested to limit their remarks to not more than 3 minutes. The school board will not hear statements involving issues that have been scheduled for public hearings, such as capital improvement program, budget, and boundaries. Complaints regarding individual students or school-based employees should be directed to the appropriate school principal or other school official. Speakers should refrain from using personally identifiable information in connection with an individual student. Speakers are expected to deliver their comments with the decorum and respect appropriate to the conduct of the public's business. Thank you for your cooperation, and thanks to those who have come to speak to us today. Another reminder to our speakers, please be sure that your masks are on at all times. Please be sure that your nose and your mouth are covered and that you remain a little bit of distance away from the microphone. Today, 10 citizens have signed up to address the board, and we also have 2 video testimonies. I will now turn it over to the clerk to call our citizen participants. Ms. Mulberg will be calling the first speaker.
My apologies. The first speaker is Teddy Geis.
You may need to step a little closer to the microphone.
Good evening, school board members. 2 weeks ago, I spoke to you about my struggles with online learning and how a return to school in the third quarter is not helpful to me. I did speak in support of concurrent learning and how I believe it'll help even more because learning from a computer and being online for upwards of 15 hours a day is exhausting. I was pleased to see the vote at the last meeting with bringing high schools back before February 1st, but none of my concerns have really been resolved. Originally, my cohort group was supposed to return to school on February 1st, and now that's January 26th. My question is, what difference will these 5 days make? I honestly don't feel that it will be able to help me that much. Last quarter, I got mostly D's and F's on my biology quizzes and tests, and I really do not want to repeat this streak again this quarter. I heard from the superintendent that they may shrink virtual instruction. That is not a good idea whatsoever. More school time is necessary for us, not less. I'm very concerned with these decisions being made because I feel failed and that my student opinion has been overlooked. I'm hoping at the return to school work session a week from today, will yield the results that can benefit me more, including an earlier return to school if possible. Finally, I'd like to extend a thank you from my school On behalf of Woodson High School and our principal, Dr. Carlin Ford, I would like to give you all an extra large thank you card signed by myself, our principals, and class council, and dozens of Woodson seniors. We really appreciate what the school board letting us do by having our senior drive-thru for Halloween, and we had a good turnout, so hopefully something like this can happen again while we still have nice weather. Thank you, especially Ms. McLaughlin, for helping us out. I would like to conclude by thanking these amazing clerks for making today possible, because I'm sure it was not easy to set up this auditorium. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Mr. Jorge Tarico.
Good evening, school board. First, I want to thank you for all the hard work that you do and the suffering of fake accusations that you sometimes suffer unjustly. Most people don't know the amount of work you do, but I can tell you that over the past 5 months, I've learned to appreciate it. For the record, I want to note that you do full-time labor for part-time wages. Your salaries for 2021 are $32K, or approximately $16 to $20 an hour, depending on how many hours you do per week. I mention these facts because I believe they are crucial to discern a core idea. Are public schools here to provide a market purpose, or are they here to provide a moral purpose? I would say that it is the latter, and that oftentimes the latter is not recompensed in our society. That market doesn't do that. I believe your work, like the work of teachers and educators, is greatly undervalued, but of great moral importance. In the same way, the mission of public schools is misunderstood and not valued. When discussing what has been going on with TJ for the past 35 years in Fairfax County, via AAP and GET over the past 60 years, and in our Commonwealth over the past 370 years, we have to assert that it has been a long and damaging history, full of over and disparate treatment of underrepresented groups. We're only now, slowly now, dismantling those structures. In that context, we have to recognize the myth of merit that people use to buttress their opposition to change. The disparate implementations of AAP, gifted governor schools and access to those resources are fruits of this history. I say all this because this myth of merit, especially as it pertains to education, is often confused with other aspects of daily life, such as sports, jobs, and economic markets. People think incorrectly that there is some way to fairly recognize talent and giftedness, especially that which is earned, and nature versus nature given. There isn't. Proponents of testing like to believe that it is fair. They talk about their children working harder than others, of their investments of time and sometimes money, etc., yet do not recognize the level of chance that already placed them in that right place at the right time. I say this because supporting democracy creates a current unacceptable ism, that of credentialism. It is a meritocratic hubris that one deserves with that which they have earned. It gives pride to those who are fortunate enough to build on compounded privileges and devalues those who didn't have that fortune to start. Some people think that getting to Harvard, Stanford, MIT, or anything like that proves their merit. But yet, we have to acknowledge that even in the FDR administration, they had in their cabinet people who did not have any college degree, yet they did something tremendous. And most recently, some of the hardest things that have happened in our economy, such as the Wall Street crash, were done by the most credentialed people. Look at the Iraq War and things like that as well. Again, the most credentialed. I say this because I want to fight against the meritocratic hubris that has led us into those situations. And I want you to understand that we need to focus on building community, rather than focusing on ourselves. We need to find a way to bring people together. I want to continue to advocate for chance to tackle this hubris. I want to continue to support public schools and their moral, not market mission to provide opportunities for growth and development, not just to those who can compound on their given draw, but rather to a representative population. I want to have an inclusive goal for our county and for our schools. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Haimang Nagar.
Hello. So basically, I'll start with what has been done about TJ. In October, it was announced unilaterally, without any input from the FCPS community, an abrupt change to the TJ admissions policy of using a lottery system. The entrance test that has been used for decades to recognize the best candidates to pursue math and science education, and that has worked so well that TJ has been to the top school of the nation for a very long time. Now, the superintendent says that he wants to eliminate the entrance test because he wants to promote diversity. On doing a numerical analysis of the students' ethnic diversity who apply to TJ, it has become clear that his proposal will actually decrease the diversity in TJ and further marginalize Asian American students of denying them educational opportunities. He thinks he can take advantage of the COVID pandemic and the existing political climate in the country and force a unilateral decision on the FCPS community the way he did for virtual learning. This is a lazy decision, exposing a poverty of thought in trying to find an easy solution to a very complex issue. Furthermore, I have seen multiple times since March, the complete disregard for any of the parents or the students' issues that has come in front of the superintendent. The complete disregard for the survey and giving of the survey when the parents chose hybrid instead of virtual in an overwhelming majority. Also, ignoring the health guidance provided by the Virginia Department of Health and complete dragging of feet of getting the students back into school, into in-person learning. If this is not a gross abuse of power, what is? Another one is the complete failure of virtual learning during the spring semester was the first exposed. And then we paid millions of dollars to a law firm to basically conduct an audit. Now we're asking for the results of the audit, and those results those are completely ignored. When an FOIA is presented to provide an answer, they say, yeah, you cannot see the audit at all. If this is not a gross abuse of power, what is? We demand all these answers, and basically, if this was a private company, if FCP was a private company, the board of directors would have basically just ended the contract of the superintendent right there and then. I don't know why there is a discussion also going on about this. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe our next speaker is attending virtually, Rama Murthy.
Hi, my name is Rama Murthy. I live in Fairfax, Virginia. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I would like to voice my concerns about the proposed changes to the TJ admission process. And I would like to propose an alternative to increase the underrepresented student community. My son is a TJ alumni and is an undergraduate student at a top college. As a high school junior, he interned at a firm where he analyzed their data using complex AI and gave the trends to the management. The company was quite impressed how a high school student could analyze the data in such a short period of time. He owes this knowledge and deep understanding of the subject to his teachers and the curriculum at TJ. This is the level currently being taught at TJ. This is why it is hurting so many parents who have seen their kids do really well, that the nation's best high school is being altered without much consideration. The main reason a merit-based test and admission works is because it's an objective way of knowing students who are interested in STEM-related fields, giving them an opportunity to build their interest. It's similar to a tryout in any other sports team. Because of the TJ test, the kids who get into TJ are ready for the rigorous curriculum the school offers. It also gives kids the concept of working hard and achieving their goals. These are life lessons. Even if kids do not go to TJ, but they work hard to prepare for the test, they do really well in other high schools and get into good colleges. As a first-generation immigrant, I know the value of hard work. We cannot teach our kids to believe in lottery system to help achieve their dreams. When they apply for colleges or apply for jobs, there won't be any lottery system to help them. It is through hard work and being competitive they can survive in this world. Why are we setting up the kids for failure by giving them false expectation when the world is getting more and more competitive? Instead, let us help prepare them. We also know that FCPS in particular, TJ, attracts the best talent in the area. We will be hurting the economy of the Fairfax County by bringing down the education standards of our area. This will eventually lead to a phenomenon called brain drain. Putting constraints like this has led many talents to leave countries and migrate to other places in search of right opportunity. There are different ways to increase the African American, Hispanics, and underrepresented communities. One way to increase is increase the number of seats to 535 and allocate 55 seats, which is about 10% of the seats, to economically disadvantaged kids. Those seats should be filled with merit, but among the economically disadvantaged kids. This will guarantee that TJ will always have 10% economically disadvantaged kids. These are the reasons why I oppose TJ lottery. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Didi El Sayed.
The superintendent took to the podium to propose admission changes to TJ. But that evening, as he made his formal presentation, 200 parents watched from the gallery, barely containing their anger, and some interrupted the superintendent's presentation with boos and jeers. Over the next 2 weeks, the school board members received hundreds of emails from parents protesting the new admissions proposal. Protesters represented a relatively small constituency given the size of FCPS, but they were politically well connected and some had close ties to Democrats on the board. It soon became clear that the board had little stomach for the full-out political brawl over the issue. Almost immediately, the superintendent's proposal was dead in the water. That excerpt wasn't from 2020. This happened in 2001, and it was documented in a Harvard case study verbatim. 3 years later, the Blue Ribbon Commission released a report that I would want to quote as well, so we can all understand what TJ has become was never supposed to happen. The admission for TJ is to provide an extensive and challenging curriculum with emphasis on mathematics, science, and technology for students with high ability, aptitude, and interest in those disciplines. Please note that it does not say for students with the highest ability or the highest aptitude. TJ's mission statement says that it aims to prepare graduates to become responsible citizens and leaders. How are we supposed to teach students to be leaders when we say it's okay to leave low-income and Black and Latinx and neurodiverse students behind? The Blue Ribbon Commission also briefly talks about TJ's admissions test. There is abundant evidence that such qualities as intellectual curiosity, motivation for the sheer joy of learning, and the passion for scientific pursuits are not easily captured by the standardized tests and grade point averages. Sheer joy of learning. TJ students spend their lunches crying if they don't have A's. If they do have A's, because they're afraid of losing them. They sign up for 5, 6, 7 APs because they care more about the GPA boost than the content. Where, I ask you, is this passion for learning? Because in the 3 years that I've been here, I have yet to see it. And lastly, I'd like to highlight what the Blue Ribbon Commission says about TJ admissions as a whole. The current admissions process is significantly inferior to that of most highly selective high schools and post-secondary institutions that have maintained high academic standards while achieving substantially more inclusive student populations. How can we claim to be the top high school in the nation with a significantly inferior admissions process? Changing our admissions process is not sacrificing excellence for diversity. We're creating excellence. So there we have it. TJ, as it stands now, has failed in every way to measure up to what it was originally designed to do. So I ask you, what exactly are we trying to preserve? Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Aksha Devarakanda.
Hi, hello, can you see me?
Yes, go ahead, please.
My name is Akshay and I'm a 2011 TJ graduate. I want to address the notion that changes to the TJ admissions process are anti-Asian. As an Asian American, I support reform, whether it be through a merit lottery or holistic review that is better able to give everyone a fair chance than the current process. The whole debate has put me in a difficult position as an Indian American who was born to immigrants. I benefited from the current admissions process. I grew up in a well-off family that could afford test prep and that could take me to and from various clubs and activities. I had these advantages because my parents supported me out of love, and I know the parents you're hearing from similarly care for their children. It's difficult for me to see many in my community feel that they're being hurt. These people are my aunties and my uncles. I know that they feel that something is being taken from them. However, there are many groups that have been left out. The Asian American community is not a monolith. There are many groups in the Northern Virginia region that are underrepresented at TJ: Vietnamese, Filipino, Pakistani, Bengali, Mongolian families, English speakers of other languages, and more. Almost 20% of Asians in Fairfax County are economically disadvantaged, whereas less than 2% of current TJ students qualify for free or reduced price lunch. At the October 8th school board meeting, you heard TJ alumnus Brandon Kim share his story about the hardships he faced as a lower income student. Furthermore, You heard me talk 2 weeks ago about gender disparities at TJ. The gender gap hurts all girls, including Asian ones. There are many Asians across various ethnic, income, and gender groups that deserve to be at TJ but are not there. All Asians are people of color, and they're a part of diversity at TJ, but we have to discuss representative diversity as well. If TJ doesn't truly reflect Northern Virginia, then the students there lose out, including Asian ones. This type of diversity comes from an admissions process. Representative diversity should come from an admissions process that gives everyone a fair chance. Because of lack of representative diversity, my education there was not as good as it could have been. Academic research shows that diverse groups of students have greater problem-solving abilities than students of similar backgrounds. When we establish schools like TJ, we do it because high school is a critical time for cultivating passion for STEM. But more than academics, when TJ doesn't reflect its community, then we inadvertently teach students that STEM itself can be separate from one's community. We teach that to succeed in STEM, we don't have to have different voices in the room. This is a disservice to all of TJ students, regardless of background. For example, I didn't have any Black friends at TJ. My whole life I've been passionate about the environment and outdoors, but it wasn't until I made Black friends in college that I learned about how Black people don't have as much access to green spaces and natural parks as other groups. That's a critical part of environmental science that I otherwise wouldn't have learned in a classroom. There are many other such examples, but the failure of TJ to allow for representative diversity is a deficit in its STEM education, hurting all of its students, including its Asian ones. But it is more than that. It is anti-Asian.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Harry Jackson.
Good evening, members of the board. Just like to point out that a few members, one of which was a child and another citizen that wasn't able to be heard when they came in this week. If anyone's willing to actually walk through a pandemic to speak, they should be heard. But thank you. As an FCPS parent, minority, and advocate for diversity within our school system, I'd like to weigh on the conversation. Should we renew Scott Brabrand's contract? The answer is a resounding no. Because all he's done is bring headaches to the school board and bring about controversial proposals. There's even now, as we speak, an online petition that has over 9,000 signatures agreeing that we should remove him, which states that Scott Brabrand has continued to put the safety of young children attending FCPS schools and has ignored complaints of parents and students at Fairfax County. Other counties have always put their children's safety first, but Scott Brabrand has proven once again he does not care. We need to remove him from his authority and to put someone who does not care about the student safety in charge. And from what I've noted, that Scott Brabrand, he has failed the FCPS school system. He's failed to have a smooth roll of distance learning during the pandemic, losing a year of education for our children, and more recently, the debacle of the recent ransomware attack. Recently, he's also failed to provision services and provide a safe and effective education for our children. He's also perpetuated inequality during his tenure as Fairfax Superintendent. The diversity of FCPS has declined, even though he told the board that increased, and he's failed to invest in underdeveloped areas, perpetuating an inequality. As a distraction, he decided to target TJ, misusing a George Floyd metaphor at the 11th hour to save his contract renewal, one worth over $300,000 annually. And speaking to the school board members, did he only meet with some of you before this proposal discussed this plan? If so, it would certainly indicate that he works in a conspiratorial manner to pit more board members against each other in order to push policy, something that a superintendent is not supposed to do. That is a function that is within the purview of the school board. He should be focusing on provisioning services, which he has failed to do. Let's remember the distraction he offered were plans he pushed that lacked data and pitted one minority against another in a racially tinged version of the Hunger Games when it comes to TJ admission, and he only changed it in minor areas because he was gauging political wins. And those plans would still establish white homogeneous TJ for the sake of equity, not equality, targeting the Asian community and those successful Black, Hispanic, and other underrepresented minorities living in majority white neighborhoods. One has to wonder, what issue does Dr. Brabrand have with minorities living in good neighborhoods? Is he for segregation? His past performance does not show a glowing record. We do not want someone who has had a debacle with distance learning during the pandemic. We do not want someone who left our school networks vulnerable to ransomware. And we do not want a manipulative Archie Bunker running our schools, and we should not renew his contract. For over $300,000 a year, we can find someone else.
Our next speaker is Vanessa Hall. Ms. Hall, we can't hear you. We still can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Oh, Too many buttons. Thank you. Hi, I'm a TJ alumnus and an FCPS parent. I'm also a 5-year science Olympiad coach and mentor. Thus, I've spent hundreds of hours with incredible TJ caliber students and their families. First off, is TJ segregated? Yes, statistics say so, with fewer than 5% Hispanic and Black students and
Sir, we cannot have this
economically
disruption.
disadvantaged students. Therefore,
Security,
even
please.
Langley High School is less
Ms.
segregated.
Hall, please stop
As
for
you
1
know,
second. We'll start your time
can
over.
you not hear me?
Please stop and
Sorry.
we'll start your time over. Just 1
Ma'am,
second.
we will have you start over.
I can hear.
Oh, I'm sorry. What happened?
There was something that happened in the room. You go ahead and start over. We're starting your time over. Thank you.
Oh, just a moment. Okay. Thank you. So, hi. So I should start now?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh
I'm
my God.
an FCPS parent. I'm also a 5-year science Olympiad coach and mentor. Thus, I've spent hundreds of hours with incredible TJ caliber students and their families. First off, is TJ segregated? Statistics say yes. You honestly know what those statistics are. I don't need to share them. But the statistics are so bad that even Langley High School is less segregated. And as you know, Fairfax County has 27% Hispanic, 10% Black students, and 29% of all Fairfax students are classified as economically disadvantaged. Next question is TJ elite or elitist? I'm not going to touch that, but the eponymous Brookings Institute study has found that to create true change, you have two choices. One, simply abolish the magnet high school, not feasible, or you must change the admissions criteria itself by explicitly taking background into account. Changing the admissions bar, as you've recommended, is thought to be the best way to overcome stark disparities by race, income level, and geography. So I compliment you on your efforts to reform admissions because we all know piecemeal changes have not worked. Will changing TJ admissions harm its quality? Any suggestions that modified admissions will harm TJ quality shows little faith in TJ teachers and administrators, much less in TJ students, who I've found to be hardworking, intelligent, and resilient problem solvers. Will changing TJ admissions harm students? Why should it? By expanding regional access to TJ, you may offer some students a bright future at their home schools where amazing STEM opportunities also exist. I've worked with kids for 8 years who choose to apply to TJ and an equal number who don't. Those who avoid TJ do not regret their choice. Instead, they're thrilled to have flexibility and opportunities at their base schools. So what about the thousands of voices that we haven't heard from? Only 3% of TJ students come from about 15 of the 26 middle schools, which results in hundreds of high caliber students who aspire to TJ but cannot overcome the economic and logistical hurdles of the admissions process. These worthy students have worked for years with fewer resources, since the middle schools with few, if any, students admitted to TJ are universally missing opportunities found at the TJ pipeline middle schools. We do not hear their voices, and yet you're determining their fate. TJ is only one of 25 high schools in Fairfax County, and you have 180,000 other students in your care. So in honor of the decisive and necessary action like you've taken in renaming Confederate schools, I ask you, if not us, then who? If not now, then when? Thank you for your time, and thanks for all of your hard work during this pandemic time. You guys have really gone over and above. Thanks.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Mahua Mitra.
Hi, are you able to hear me?
Yes, go ahead, please.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Mahua Mitra, and I have been a resident in Fairfax County since 2001. I'm an immigrant from India who worked my way up through several hurdles, hardships after arriving here. It has been a tough route from being a non-immigrant graduate student to a US citizen to finally being a US government official. I want you to know that I have never been offered any freebie in this country. Everything has been hard-earned, and I'm proud to be self-made. I have 2 boys who are naturally gifted in academics, particularly in STEM. They show inclination towards STEM subjects naturally. They work very hard, choosing academics over other activities such as sports and art. TJ has been a dream for my older son, and he wants to accomplish it this year through his talent and skills. The recent uncertainty over TJ admissions process amidst this pandemic has caused serious stress and anxiety in our family as well as in our community. We recently found out that the TJ exams for this year has been canceled and the path forward is unclear. My question to all of you is that why was FCPL silent about these drastic changes that were brewing? Where was the outreach and communication to students and parents? Why are we rushing through these significant changes without engaging all stakeholders? Slamming these changes on an already stressed community of students is completely unjustified. You are doing this in the name of racial equality, presenting proposals that are poorly crafted, with no supporting data or evidence that will help accomplish your goals. Your proposals so far may or may not increase admissions to the targeted group of people, but will be sure to decrease admissions to the Asian community. I have never ever seen this level of racial discrimination in the United States. I cannot imagine any coach wanting to form their best team via a lottery process advocating racial equality. Any selection criteria for a magnet program involves some level of competition to weed out the best. Perseverance and hard work have been the hallmark of success in this country in every walk of life, so why should this be different? Let's do this the right way, provide opportunities at the grassroots level, strengthen the pipeline, expand outreach to the underprivileged, early identification of giftedness, subsequent support, and expansion of the AAP program at the lowest levels. Slamming a student who's not prepared for the rigors of TJ and cutting it through lottery does not do the society or the student any good. School board, you are here to protect the rights of every student. And it seems like your decisions are marginalized towards the progress of particular race groups at the cost of others. Please work together to reinstate the TJ exams immediately as it impacts the whole entire 8th grade community. Please follow up with a holistic program that is merit-based, data-driven, and thought through with fair outreach and acceptance for the future years. Thank you very much for this opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Our final speaker is Andrew Hayes.
Hi there. Good evening. I'm Dr. Andrew Hayes, astrophysicist, parent, Sully District resident, TJ 99 alumnus, and vice president of the TJ Alumni Action Group. Could I just extend my sympathies for the frivolous lawsuit nonsense y'all are dealing with right now? We've already seen that many of the notable coalition personalities are financially entangled with the test prep industry or are concealing working for a corporate media firm, such as Frisbee and Associates. For real, Google it. I think I can guess who Frisbee and Associates clients are. They just want to make sure that the system will still let certain parents guarantee their kids a slot. They say it explicitly right there in the legal brief. But you know who you don't see listed as a plaintiff? XYZ. Maybe the child of a Black or Latinx couple. Maybe their parents are working 2 or 3 jobs apiece, trying to make enough money to afford rent, much less elite training programs, competitions, and summer camps. Maybe their daughter is outside every evening trying to check off the entire Messier astronomical catalog through a $25 Toy Star telescope. Maybe she dressed up as Katherine Johnson for Halloween. Kids like that are out there, and these shills are in here working their tails off to make sure kids like that get shut out of TJ. Shame on them. But here's the deal. They're actually making the test abolishing argument for you. They claim that if TJ is a school for the gifted, it must have a test for giftedness. Well, the data is in, you can't purchase giftedness, so why does it seem to be so much more common in wealthy families with high-powered parents? Why is it that TJ isn't even representative of Asians? Even within the Asian population at TJ is missing students on free and reduced price lunch, certain nationalities within the continent of Asia, twice exceptional children, English language learners, and girls. Whatever the old test measured, it wasn't giftedness. So even if their contention held water, it would still be an argument to abolish the old test. Now, as a senior alumnus, I had the privilege to attend TJ during the tenure of its founding principal, Jeff Jones. Principal Jones told us that it was intended to be a laboratory school to explore and disseminate the most effective teaching paradigms throughout the state. Very early on, in his words, the reform he most wanted to put in place was, you guessed it, merit lottery. He said, "It's far better for a student to think herself unlucky rather than unworthy if she were not admitted. I would dare add it would be healthier for TJ students to think of themselves as luckier rather than worthier than their not admitted peers too. It comes down to the question of whether many or few children are qualified to attend TJ. It's a myth that only a few are, or that standards will go down with the lottery. We see the lengths that the test prep companies are willing to go to protect their bottom lines, but you can liberate hardworking families from that drudgery and increase performance standards by enacting Superintendent Brabrand's merit lottery proposal. Vote yes on the merit lottery, and thank you."
Thank you. We now have video testimony from Kimberly Adams and Sarah Robles.
Good evening, Chairman Anderson, school board members, Dr. Brabrand, member of the leadership team. My name is Kimberly Adams, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Fairfax Education Association. Our union remains concerned with the return to schools plan for our system. The current data and metrics show that cases in our area continue to rise. The school board does not have the metrics that are being used to determine when we dial back or dial down and stop sending staff and students back to in-person instruction as it becomes too dangerous. This week, the numbers continue to climb, and there is no clear path to keep everyone safe. The reports from other locations across the country and also localities nearby are showing a return to virtual instruction. Right now, FCPS continues to undermine our ability to deliver high-quality virtual instruction by requiring the decision to resign, retire, or take leave without pay. This is unacceptable for a so-called caring culture of which we are constantly told that we are part. We believe that this school board has the ability and the duty to explore both the metrics associated as well as the actual costs associated with what we are currently planning. We have provided revisions to the leave policy that we are asking for 3 specific items. Allow your employees to utilize their sick leave to continue on a paid leave status with earned sick leave as long as possible under leave of absence. Allow your employees to work outside of FCPS in similar job categories with the expectation that we will return to FCPS next school year. Allow your employees a further subsidy of their health insurance beyond the standard COBRA offering, particularly for those who are medically fragile and were forced on leave of absence due to FCPS' inability to meet their ADA accommodations. This board must understand that your employees are choosing to leave FCPS. Our colleagues must resign so they can earn a wage to feed their families. There must be a better way to match up your staff who must remain virtual rather than informing them that their health or that of their family is worth less. Why are we being led to believe that employees' lives are worth less than those of our students? Help us to draw the line. Commit to allowing those who need to remain virtual to stay virtual. Investigate the metrics for our dial down policy and asking to take on the hard work of changing your leave policy to protect your employees. If not now, when? It is not too late to keep the Fairfax family intact. Thank you.
Good evening, school board members. My name is Sarah Robles, and I am a teacher, resident, and a graduate of Fairfax County Public Schools. I'm talking to you today about my concerns for the return to school plan as well as the concurrent model. From the beginning, I have supported virtual learning. I know it's not a perfect model and some students are having a difficult time with it, but I do believe it's the safest method. So far, I feel that virtual has been successful for many of my students. We've sung songs, played games, and found different ways to make music class fun. It's been a challenge and we've all learned new things. I'm truly afraid about what will happen when we go back into the building. I know my administrators will work their hardest to make sure everything is safe, but we know this virus is unpredictable. We do not have a full picture of who has the virus. We are relying on everyone to use the honor system, stay home when they are sick. We are relying on the honor system to make sure everyone is socially distanced and practices those behaviors outside of school. I'm particularly worried as an itinerant specialist teacher because I work with all grade levels and at 2 separate schools. Adding to all of that anxiety of returning in person is the idea of concurrent teaching. From what I understand about this model, teachers will be asked to teach 3 separate groups of children all at the same time. I feel the promotional video shared of the pilot program at Kings Park does not reflect the reality that many teachers will face. We will not have an online buddy teacher. We will not get a second computer monitor to help manage the virtual classroom. We will not get a headset or lapel microphone to amplify our voices so that students can hear us with our masks on. I'm honestly not even sure how it's possible to teach concurrently in a music environment. According to FCPS health guidelines, students in person cannot sing, cannot play any shared instruments, perform any dances or games that require students to be less than 6 feet from each other, or even sit in a circle. In a virtual setting, we have sung, moved our bodies to music without fear of social distancing, found ways to modify our music games, and even managed to still have chorus. I feel I can do much more in a virtual setting than in the building during this pandemic. These decisions are at the county level, and we are counting on you as a school board to protect teachers and staff and students. Please keep Fairfax County Public Schools virtual for the remainder of the school year. Thank you.
At this time, I call on Mr. Anabudo for student representative matters.
Good evening, everyone. School board members, Dr. Braybrand, FCPS leadership team, and the Fairfax County community. I just want to say hi and congratulate everyone on weathering what seems to be a very tumultuous time, not only in our individual lives, but in our lives as a community and a country and as a world. I have a couple of things I want to say this evening, and I don't think it's going to take too long. I have a couple of thoughts that I want to kind of get off my chest, but before I do that, I want to first take a moment to go through all the thank yous that I have because I'm very grateful this evening. First, obviously, the Fairfax County families and the school board for all the work that's being done. And then a special thank you, as always, to the Fairfax County Public Schools teachers for the dedication and hard work and care that goes into all the work they do, day in and day out and year in and year out. Students will owe a debt of gratitude to all you teachers that we might never, ever be able to repay. And then, again, there's also a very, very special thank you to Dr. Braybrand, Dr. Ivy, Dr. Presidio, and the rest of the FCPS leadership team for their responsiveness to the concerns and needs of students. I can say with immense pride and honor that we are in a school system where our leadership has made a point never to ignore, to cast aside, or to deject the voice of students. I was worried when I first was elected to this position that it wouldn't matter much, but as I've spent time acclimating to my role and trying to do my best to represent the voice of nearly 200,000 diverse students in our amazing county, it's become evident that we have leaders in our system who truly do care about student voice. With that said, there's still work to be done, and part of my second comments will kind of circulate around those thoughts, but I really just wanted to take a moment and say how grateful I am and how honored I am to be a Fairfax County Public Schools student, and how thankful I am to you, Dr. Braybrand, and our leadership staff for all the care and effort that has gone into listening, truly listening, and working to address the needs and concerns of students, particularly in a moment when students are experiencing a lot. So, kind of shifting gears a little bit, I guess the final things I have, and this will open up the first thing I want to talk about, is to Mr. Greenfelder. He's been amazing all around in all his help and support that he's given me to help kind of all the things that he's been working on. But particularly this past week, I was able to see the concurrent learning pilot that was going on at West Springfield High School. While I don't have too much to say about this topic other than a quick shout out to Mr. Mukai and the West Springfield High School technology staff for miracles working over at the high school. And thanks to them as well, allow us to see what's happening and what's possible. I just want to say that the creativity and the work and the diligence and it's like a protection.
Mr. Anabuto, we're having a hard time hearing you. Do you want to try to turn off your camera? I think we lost Mr. Anabuto. We will come back to him when he returns to the meeting. We'll move on to item 4.01. This is a portion of the meeting where the board will confirm any action regarding issues that were discussed in the closed meeting. These issues may include action taken regarding student disciplinary matters. Board members have discussed each individual case, and at this time we'll make several motions to confirm the recommended action. I can now call on Ms. Corbett-Sanders.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a motion on employee dismissal panels. As authorized by Virginia Code Section 22.1 through 311, I move that the school board direct the superintendent to amend applicable FCPS regulations by December 1, 2020 to provide 3-member panels for employee hearings.
Is there a second? Thank you, Mr. Frisch. All in favor? We have Ms. McLaughlin, Ms. Corbett-Sanders, Mr. Frisch, Ms. Omeish, Ms. Sizemore-Heiser, Ms. Marin, Ms. Cohen, Ms. Pekarsky, Ms. Keys-Gamarra, Ms. Dernak-Kofax, Ms. Tolan, and myself. That is unanimous. I now call on Ms. McLaughlin for a motion.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move to grant in part the disciplinary appeal of a student who engaged in inappropriate behavior towards other students and to modify the disciplinary decision of the division superintendent.
Is there a second?
I second.
All in favor? We have Ms. McLaughlin, Ms. Corbett-Sanders, Mr. Frisch, Ms. Omeish, Ms. Sizemore-Heiser, Ms. Marin, Ms. Pekarsky, Ms. Keys-Gamarra, Ms. Tolan, Ms. Dernak-Kofax, and Dr. Anderson. All opposed? None. Any abstentions? Ms. Cohen. Thank you. Motion passes. Mr. Anabuto, I noticed that you've returned. Would you like to complete your remarks?
Please. I'm sorry. I'll try to be brief. Thank you, Dr. Anderson. But yes, to kind of complete my thought on the first point I was trying to make, there was a lot of amazing things that I got to saw while I was at the high school concurrent learning model pilot. And there were a couple of key takeaways that I felt I wanted to share with the community. And the first of which being, it felt extremely empowering to see something at least a little bit normal in a time where absolutely nothing feels normal. That's the first takeaway. 2, with creative leadership comes creative solutions, and the creativity and the inspiration that I saw from the people on the ground at West Springfield High School to try something new, the time where we need new things, was also felt very timely and very optimal, I guess. But I guess the caveat to all the remarks I'm going to make is the final point, of course, is the amount of transition and work and time that it would require for us to successfully set up this model. While I think it is totally doable, and I'm excited to see what our county is able to create and set forth and do with this new idea, this new model, I think that there's a lot of work that needs to be done on behalf of the teachers, because we always ask so much of them, and this model is no different, and that is why there's always extra special things for them. But there's definitely careful consideration needs to go on their part. And to me, the solution was getting them in sooner now to see what they can feel like, getting adjustment to, concurrent teaching before we even talk about bringing large portions of group 7 and 8 into the building. There's lots of different things that I can think and, see in that realm of things. But I just wanted to say that my feelings were overwhelmingly positive about what I saw there. But of course, my perspective as a student might be very different than that of a perspective of a teacher or an administrator, and I don't pretend to speak on behalf of or for any of those viewpoints. But despite all of that and what that means and what the future holds for students, the letter I sent to leadership, while it was extremely well received, and while my remarks at the beginning of the school board meeting centered around how thankful I am to Dr. Brabrand and our leadership staff for their responsiveness, there is still plenty of work to be done. And I think that I want to start the last part of my remarks by reading something that one of the most esteemed members of our community, Ms. Kimberly Boateng, sent as an open letter to not just our leadership, but the community on behalf of students. For those who don't know, Kimberly Boateng was the student representative who served on this board this last year. So she held a position that I currently held. And she also represents students to the school board career and technology advisement committee. And she also, as the president of the student advisory council for FCPS. So she, similar to I, works to represent the voice of students leadership across the county. And in an open letter to our leadership staff, she wrote, she was asking for a week of grace after the election, and I fully support the sentiment and thoughts behind her letter, and I completely agree that FCPS needs to work to find creative ways to ensure that student wellness is at the center of everything that is happening with all the turmoil that is going on. And I want to read a specific part of the letter, and I want to build upon that thought for a quick second. She wrote, as students, we have weathered the worst that a school year could give us. A global pandemic that we somehow still find ourselves in. Global pandemic that we somehow still found ourselves in. A tipping point in the racial violence crisis in America. And now we are sitting ducks, anxiously waiting to see what the future has in store for us. Your students are resilient, but there comes a point where you can't expect strength from battered children and adolescents. Kimberly has said what I've been trying to say in way too many words in lots of different ways perfectly, and it captured a lot of what students are going through in that little bit of her open letter. There is so much turmoil, so much change, so much difference, and not enough time to process any of it. And I think that's at the root of all the anxiety that we see, not just from, teachers or parents, but the community as a whole, because there's not enough time to process things. And, there's not one clear-cut solution that I can sit here and pretend that I have. I mean, one idea that working with students across the county to kind of come up with that we think might be great is changing the way we look at grade weighting, for example. But I guess what I'm here to say is that I just hope that we can make sure that there is time for not just a week of grace following this election, but a school year of grace, because this year is so different. No matter what happens, no matter what students go back into, we need fundamental changes to the way we're talking about working and operating in this model: concurrent, in-person, virtual, hybrid. It doesn't really matter what it is, because students are going through things we have never gone through before. And to ask us to achieve and pretend like it's normal, like it was before, is unrealistic, and students are not going to be able to do many of us. So I just ask for creative solutions to be utilized in whatever process that moves forward. I'm working with students on my part to come up with those solutions, because I know we can't just complain and not provide leadership with some of what we're thinking about. And like I said, one of those quick ideas that we've kind of talked about is grade weighting. Talking about weighting effort more than tests in the middle of a pandemic is one of those ideas that we've been floating around. I don't know what the specific solution is, that's just one. But I just want to say publicly that I'm committed to working not just with the students that I've been working with to kind of, voice these concerns and these opinions, and how thankful I Kimberly for doing the same, but also to working with leadership in the school board to ensure that as soon as possible we work to find specific, creative, meaningful solutions to lower the burden that is being placed on all of the people within the county right now, particularly students. Thank you.
Thank you so much for those very thoughtful remarks, Mr. Anabudo. Absolutely. Now we'll have some amendments to the school year 2021 annual calendar. I call on Ms. Cohen for the motion.
I move to amend the SY 2020-2021 annual school year calendar to include Inauguration Day, Wednesday, January 20th, 2021, as a holiday for all Fairfax County Public Schools, students, and employees.
Is there a second? Ms. Eismer-Heiser, thank you. Ms. Cohen, would you like to speak to your motion?
Yes, thank you. This actually came about from a constituent who reached out and noticed that our calendar was out of compliance. So pursuant to regulation 4421.20, section 6, A and B, the following school holidays are listed for all personnel: Labor Day, Indigenous Peoples Day, Thanksgiving Day and the following Friday, winter break, Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday, George Washington's birthday, spring break, Memorial Day, Inauguration Day every 4th year. This proposed change to include Inauguration Day as a school holiday will put the 2020-2021 school calendar back into compliance with regulation 4421.20.
Ms. Eismer-Heiser, would you like to speak to your second?
Yes, I would. And while I really appreciate Ms. Cohen's remarks, bear with me with my little civics lecture here as an American government professor. I just am so excited to second this motion because as an immigrant, what I love about this country is that it's not ruled by any one person or despots or kings or queens, but by the rule of law and by the people. And fundamental to that democracy is the peaceful transfer of power. And many say that the first real American transfer of power was actually in 1801, when John Adams lost the election to his political foe, Thomas Jefferson. Since this was the first transfer from the head of one political party to another. The peaceful transfer of power to one's political foe is what has allowed our democracy to last and what actually makes America great. The ceremony-filled presidential inauguration is a symbol and hallmark of that peaceful transfer of power. It is the very symbol of what has allowed our democracy to exist for over 200 years. So how fitting is it that 200 years after the first peaceful transfer of power, we today ensure that Inauguration Day as a holiday will be a holiday, so we, uniquely situated near DC, can actually witness the peaceful transfer of power in person or celebrate and watch any way we want. So thank you for indulging in my civics and history lesson, and thank you, Ms. Cohen, for noticing the gap. And I'm excited and honored to second this motion.
Thank you. Are there other school board members who would wish to speak to this motion? We will start with Ms. McLaughlin.
Thank you. I appreciate the eloquent words of my colleague who shares the Braddock District with me, Ms. Eismer-Heiser. And I absolutely embrace your passionate and well thought words. But I do want to speak to why I'm going to be supporting this. And it's not just the lofty ideals which are there. But one of the things we'll be talking about this evening is that the school system is run by the taxpayers. And whenever we make a decision to give a paid holiday to our employees, we have to think about equity and fiscal responsibility. In this particular case, the county government is giving this holiday off to its employees. And I think it's very important that whether you work for Fairfax County Public Schools or whether you work for the Fairfax County government, you should, as an employee, have that equity in paid time off. And so I really appreciate Dr. Brabrand, Mr. Smith, your team who put together the chart for the board that helped us to do a side-by-side comparison of the paid holidays that county employees will have and FCPS school employees will have. And by passing this and giving this paid time off, it not just reflects the ideals that my colleague Ms. Sizemore-Heiser said, but more importantly, there needs to be that equity in paid time off. And we'll be talking about another holiday as well for that. But I do want people to also be thinking about that not every employee or employer even in this county and in this Washington region gives Inauguration Day off. So for our amazing families, our amazing residents who live in Fairfax County who also want to participate in the way that Ms. Sizemore-Heiser said, they have to take a personal time off. They have to use their own vacation day to do it. And so that's why I think we always have to be very judicious about, it's not just that we would love to give as many paid days off as possible that benefit our employees, but we also have to be thinking about the fact that our own taxpayers, they pay the taxes that run our system, but then they're also the ones who have to take their own personal vacation days for the things that we want to do. So I just wanted to give that additional perspective. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McLaughlin. Ms. Marin?
Yes, thank you. I'm glad this is before us today, and as the school board liaison to the calendar committee earlier this year, I'm certainly well aware of the conversations around calendar, what constitutes a day off, and paid holidays and such, and the calendar committee did a great amount of work to try and make some clarity here. What concerns me about giving Inauguration Day off are the following. One, we're not in a normal circumstance where anyone's going to be going anywhere to view inauguration. In fact, it could be an optimal learning experience for students to be in school, view the inauguration, and have a teachable moment there. When I worked at the federal government at the start of my career, the only people who were given off in the federal government were those in the Washington, D.C. area because it was very chaotic downtown. I know because I was out of town that day and I lost a day off when I was out somewhere looking at schools in the country. I think that furthermore, that this is something that should be looked in totality with the calendar. Perhaps in the next 4 years when we're hopefully not living under COVID like this, that would be a great opportunity to encourage people to go out and go downtown and see what inauguration in person is like. But for this year, in this fiscal environment, I don't agree that it's the time to be doing this. And furthermore, I'd like it, we're going to be looking at the next school year calendar. It got pushed off from our agenda. I think it's more optimal to have this discussion as part of that school year 21-22 discussion. So I'd like to offer a motion to table, postpone to a certain time a decision about changing Inauguration Day to being a holiday. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Marin, for your motion. We will act on it at this time. Do we have a second? Seeing none, we'll return to the discussion. Are there any other speakers to the main motion? Ms. Daranak Koufax?
I'm trying to get my video to work, I'm sorry. But I do believe that there is still great merit to having this day off. I do, Ms. Marin is correct that the reason we had initially talked about this in every 4 years was because of the great opportunity for hands-on experiential learning so close, living so close to the nation's capital. That was a reason that we talked about giving it off 4 years ago. So while I do appreciate that these are not normal times, this is not, it is not, most people will choose not to go down to crowded spaces, and it may not even look like it normally looks. I would assume that will probably be the case. But I nonetheless believe it is a great opportunity to watch that peaceful transfer of power, to have that opportunity to have those kind of discussions with your children. And it is more than, and it is a day-long event where something in a democracy like ours, we can empower our children with a great many lessons. So I want the teachers to have that opportunity, teachers and staff to have that opportunity for their students as well. So that is why I supported it twice earlier during my board tenure and will continue to support it right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Darnat Kofax. Seeing that there are no other speakers, I will now call for the vote on this motion, which is that the board amend the school year 2020-2021 annual school year calendar to include Inauguration Day, Wednesday, January 20th, 2021, as a holiday for all Fairfax County Public School students and employees. All those in favor? Ms. McLaughlin, Ms. Corbett Sanders, Mr. Frisch, Ms. Omesh, Ms. Sizemore-Heiser, Ms. Cohen, Ms. Pekarsky, Ms. Darnat Kofax, Ms. Keys-Gamarra, Ms. Tolan, and Dr. Anderson. All those against? Ms. Marin, and that's 12. Thank you. The motion carries. And I'll call on Ms. Corbett Sanders for the motion.
Yes, thank you, Chair Dr. Anderson. I call I move to amend the employee calendar for the 2020-2021 school year to include the recognition of Juneteenth on June 18th, 2021 as an employee holiday, and to instruct the superintendent to recognize Juneteenth in the development of future calendars for employees.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Keys-Gamarra. Ms. Corbett Sanders, would you like to speak to your motion?
Yes, Dr. Anderson, it is my pleasure to put forth this motion tonight. It is a continuum of some action that this board took this past June when we honored Juneteenth. It was the first recognition of Juneteenth by this board, but it was a natural follow-up to a recognition that we had done the prior year on the 400th anniversary of the first slaves being brought to the United States, which Ms. Keys-Gamarra had recognized. I would love to give a bit of history about Juneteenth and why this is so important for our community. Juneteenth is the celebration and commemoration of the end of slavery in the United States. It is observed annually on June 19th for the day in history when the last state ratified the Emancipation Proclamation. This date marks the time period where African Americans of Texas received notice from President Lincoln that slavery had been abolished, as a declaration that was codified in the 13th Amendment, which was adopted in 1865. Fairfax County Public Schools continues to take steps towards creating an inclusive and compassionate environment for all students and staff, where diversity in all its forms is valued and appreciated. As part of those efforts, Juneteenth was included in the 2019-2020 school year calendar. Recently, the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors authorized their 2021 holiday schedule, which includes an observance of this holiday for all Fairfax County employees. Additionally, the Virginia legislature recently passed legislation to observe Juneteenth in its official holiday for state employees going forward. So, for the 2020 and 2021 school year, Juneteenth is June 19th, 2021, falls on a Saturday when an authorized holiday falls on a Saturday or Sunday. Typically, the preceding Friday or subsequent Monday, respectively, is observed for the holiday. So Friday, June 18th, 2021 is currently scheduled as a workday for our 12-month employees. There is no impact for the 2020-2021 school year calendar, as Friday, June 11th is the last scheduled instructional day for all of our students. I would appreciate the support of all of my colleagues so that we can make this not only a holiday for this coming June, but for the foreseeable future.
Thank you, Ms. Corbett Sanders. Ms. Keys Gamara, would you like to speak to your second?
Yes, I would. Thank you so much. And I so appreciate Ms. Corbett Sanders giving us background on this day, this important day, because what we are really recognizing is not only was our nation established with the fundamental ideas of democracy, but that democracy grew alongside the development and the acceptance of slavery and oppression that is a part of our history. For far too long, we have not openly discussed that. And this is, I think, marks a commitment to make this a clearer part of our education and the process of African Americans and people of color in this community. Given the events that we have experienced in 2020, and there have been many, sometimes a day feels like a week, but we have also seen the rise of racial tensions. And I'd like to thank our student, Mr. Anabudo, for reminding us that the weight of this year and the events that have been included, the things that we experienced this last summer with those racial tensions, have provided weight. So I believe that this is yet another way that we can normalize discussions, recognize the difficulties that this nation has been through, and to really come together as a community and learn about our history. So I fully support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Other board members who wish to speak? Ms. McLaughlin?
First, want to thank both Ms. Corbett Sanders and Ms. Keys Gamara for their eloquent words on this important holiday. I really can't even attempt to compete with what they have shared. But it is incredibly important that when we think about our own Commonwealth's history, when we think our own county's history, this is such an important holiday for us to demonstrate our solidarity, our solemn observation and appreciation for what this day means. I would just ask that Dr. Brabrand, for you and Mr. Smith, I appreciate your partnership with our county executive. And this is a holiday that I absolutely, as I talked about, every paid holiday comes at a cost. But there's no question in my mind, this is absolutely got to be done. But we have other holidays that are different from the county to the schools. And I would have been regretful to be finding ourselves and having the inequity again of who's getting more paid holidays than the others. So I would just ask if you could share with the board and all of us how you feel about the importance of going forward on a going forward basis, trying to have a little more of that kind of parallel between the paid holidays. I'm not saying that they all have to be the same, but just trying to be a little more in alignment with one another.
Dr. Brabrand?
Thank you, Chairman Anderson. Thank you, Ms. McLaughlin. That's something we've really been taking a hard look at. A few years ago, we actually saw we had a significant imbalance in the number of holidays for our employees compared to the county. And Mr. Smith led a review with our HR assistant superintendent, and we recalibrated those days. I think we're off right now only by a half day. I'll double check that. I believe that is correct. So we're going to stay very, very close as we continue to look at the calendar, and we'll provide an update to the board after we continue discussions with the county.
Thank you so much. I did want to spotlight that, Dr. Brabrand, because I know that you and Mr. Smith had worked with the prior board on our commitment to that, and I want to commend you both for that work. And I want to thank all board members involved and whoever brought this to our attention that with the county having added those two paid holidays, it was really important that to the equity piece I talked about earlier, that our employees also benefit from it. So thank you again, and I look forward very much to supporting this.
Thank you, Ms. McLaughlin. Mr. Frisch?
Thank you. I am excited to support this celebration of Juneteenth. I will tell you, though, that I am far more excited to be having a conversation about what Juneteenth means. We, as a school division, are taking steps to address the inequities of our social studies curriculum and our need for African American studies, and these celebrations of holidays that we have without giving them meaning. You know, I'm grateful that we're doing both in this case, that we are not only telling our staff and our students that this is something worthy of our celebration, but that in our classrooms, this is something worthy of our conversations. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Frisch. Seeing that there are no other speakers, I will very quickly say I am thrilled to be able to support this motion, very similarly to earlier this year when we discussed having Juneteenth be recognized during one of the board meetings. This goes in alignment with that. Mr. Frisch, you said it perfectly. It's not just identifying it, but it's ensuring that our students know exactly what it means, that they understand the meaning behind it. So thank you for making those statements. I would also be remiss if I did not give credit for bringing this forward where it is due, which is to Mr. Smith. He brought this to our attention as an issue that we needed to address as a board, not just because it's the right thing to do, but it's also in alignment with what our Board of Supervisors is doing. So thank you, Mr. Smith. At this time, I would like to call for the vote. The motion before us is that the school board approve Juneteenth as an authorized holiday, which will be observed on Friday, June 18th, 2021, for Fairfax County Public School employees. All those in favor? I will start over here this time. Ms. Cohen, Ms. Pekarsky, Ms. Marin, Ms. Eismer-Heiser, Ms. Omeish, Mr. Frisch, Ms. Corbett-Sanders, Ms. McLaughlin, Ms. Keys-Gamarra, Ms. Derenak Kofax, Ms. Tolan, and myself. That is unanimous. Thank you. I will now invite our Vice Chair to take us through the next two agenda items. Ms. Pekarsky?
Thank you, Dr. Anderson. Our adopted rules of parliamentary procedure, Robert's Rules, provide for consent agenda listing several items for approval of the board by a single motion. Many items listed have gone through board review, and documentation has been provided to all board members and the public in advance. Items may be removed from the consent agenda at the request of any board member prior to the meeting. The consent agenda items are on the screen. Is there any objection to approving the consent agenda? Hearing and seeing no objection, the consent agenda is approved. New business. The new business agenda items are on the screen. There will not be a vote tonight on these items, but action is scheduled at a future meeting.
Thank you, Ms. Pekarsky. I now call on Dr. Brabrand for superintendent matters.
Thank you, Chairman Anderson. First of all, I want to thank you and our staff for having us all here today under this hybrid arrangement. It's great to see so many of you in person and have a chance to connect face to face. It's great to be sitting back in a seat that I felt like I haven't sat in for years. And I know we're all having these moments as we work to return in a hybrid fashion, and tonight is a powerful moment to be back in this way. I'd like to share just a couple of quick things and then move on. One, next week, we talked about days that are special. The inauguration day, Juneteenth. Next week is also Veterans Day, and we're very excited to continue to recognize the contribution of our veterans. Our schools do tremendous reach out to celebrate our veterans, and I'll leave you to see all the surprises about how we'll be able to do it in a virtual fashion. I know our principals are challenged this year, trying to do so many things in a virtual way, but we want to certainly say, I want to say tonight on behalf of our entire leadership team, we recognize the role that veterans do play in our community and our military families, how much they do every day to serve and sacrifice for our country. I also want to just share, again, Nathan does an amazing job of bringing forward student voice, and I appreciate his comments. We are still a work in progress, but we are listening to students. We did, from Nathan's comments at the last board meeting, lengthened the end of quarter deadline for students. And I have to admit that decision, based on Nathan's advocacy, I recognized it as I saw my own children who are seniors spend the weekend trying to get college deadlines in. And we really do have a structural issue that every year our quarter ends at the same time we're asking our students to finish. It's time to figure out, as we're being so flexible and redesigning, how we can do that differently, and I'm going to work on that. Sometimes, honestly, I think we have to be true that until you experience it personally, maybe it's harder sometimes to see it. And we've heard it every year. We've heard it louder this year in the pandemic, and I got to witness it firsthand as a parent. We are engaged. We shared several ideas in a letter out to staff, including catch-up days for students that we're going to be doing throughout the rest of the school year. We are taking a review of our grading policies. What else can we do to really help give students second chances? But we're also meeting. I met with our teacher advisory council this week from every one of our schools, and we asked them about recommendations to address reducing student workload and to reduce teacher workload. We had a very, very engaged discussion. There are tons of ideas. We're going to be pulling those all together. I'll be sharing many of those ideas with the board as we move forward about what can we do to operationalize some of these suggestions even this year. And then finally, I know one of the things that many folks are wondering about and thinking about is our return to school schedule. We do have a return to school work session next week, next Thursday evening. I'll be updating the board on where we are. Of course, every week there's more that goes on with return to school. There's more information that we are getting as we work with our principals and teachers and our community around return to school. So we'll be bringing you an update as directed on Thursday, November 12th. And the following week, I'll have a town hall around return to school. So all the things that I'll be sharing and communicating with you, I'll also be turning around the following week and providing time at a town hall to answer any questions and continue to share out the information. It is a year unlike any other, and I continue as we look at return to school. I ask our community to continue to give each other grace. We're all trying to work together to do the right thing. There are very strong feelings on both sides, and I ask that we continue to try to come together and look and balance all the many factors that we have as we look at how to do school this year in the middle of a pandemic. So thank you, and I look forward to seeing all of you again very soon.
Thank you very much, Dr. Brabrand. Before I move on to the board committee reports, I see a hand from Ms. Dana Koufax. Okay.
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you. I now call on Ms. Marin for a budget committee update, and then Ms. Pekarsky for a report from the forum, which was held yesterday.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Anderson. Just yesterday, I guess it was, we had a work session to do a lot of budget work. Working on the budget is one of the main priorities of our school board, and we are stewards of that along with the superintendent. So what we were doing, one of the things we're doing in order to prepare for the next year's budget, as well as learn more about the bulk of the $3 billion budget, is to have monthly program reports and reviews where staff will be bringing to us analysis and information about different aspects of the school division. So we kicked that off yesterday, and the first full presentation will actually be next week to look at some staffing formulas and how the budget aligns with standards of quality work. So each month we'll be hearing about different areas of the school division. We also heard about the fiscal forecast, which is critical to understanding what might lie ahead in this time from the state and locally looking at revenue. And that is important because later in November, on the 24th, we'll be meeting with the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors to talk about budget development. So we are really trying to focus on understanding the budget more in depth, look at what's working, make sure that our tax dollars are being invested in the best way possible to get to the student success that we all want. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yesterday we heard two forum topics. The first one was presented by Ms. Keys Gamara for the board's consideration of a report to be completed by staff. The topic, as stated in the formal school board member request, was to discuss the development of a more formal, consistent structure by which our superintendent instructs staff members to address considerations of One Fairfax when selecting principals and its related process. Also to align this process of including all board members and in specific at-large members in this principal selection. After a lengthy discussion where members voiced concerns as to demands on staff workload and need to maintain focus on returning to school, the board agreed that staff would provide more information and work with the school board members to better align this process and reach the intended goals of the conversation. The second topic forum was presented by Mr. Frisch. Per his formal forum request, he asked for a staff report to establish a process for issuing new diplomas and transcripts upon request that reflect the new names of high schools that have undergone name changes and or the new names of students who have undergone legal name changes. The short discussion included questions surrounding budgetary implications, and the school board unanimously approved this request for more information through a staff report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Pekarsky. Now it is time for board matters. I now call on Ms. Cohen, followed by Ms. Keys Gamara.
Thanks very much. I've spent the last few weeks talking to parents, teachers, principals, and community members about the return to school plan. I've visited several schools and many classrooms where teachers are teaching virtually from buildings, where our PAC and Head Start teachers are teaching in person, and classes where concurrent teaching is happening. While I second what Mr. Anabudo said about the amazing ingenuity of Mr. Mackay, Ms. Fawcett, Ms. Matheny, Mr. Pope, Ms. Rizzuto, and staff, all the amazing teachers at West Springfield High School, I still remain really concerned that concurrent instruction in special ed and early elementary settings is leaving many kids behind and putting many of our teachers in the untenable situation of coming up short while trying to meet their students by name and by need. I'll continue to advocate that a one-size-fits-all approach is not in the best interest of our students and our staff. I also remain concerned about the rising coronavirus cases here in Fairfax and our surrounding counties as we bring children back into our buildings. On November 12th, I look forward to hearing from Dr. Brabrand what metrics will be used to determine when we dial back or dial up our return to school is phasing in. Until then, I'll continue to visit our schools and report back on everything I'm learning, and I still just continue to remain beyond appreciative of all of our incredible staff who is working to move mountains to help meet the needs of all of our learners in FCPS.
Ms. Keys Gamara.
Thank you. I too have been primarily focused on return to school, getting our students back in our buildings as safely as possible, having lots of meetings with our staff members and members of the community to make sure that I am hearing those concerns. And I want everyone to know that it is our first priority to try to figure out, at least my first priority, and I believe that of my colleagues, to try to figure this out. This is a very difficult time. We've heard from teachers who are concerned about their families, and we are really working, at least I believe we're trying to figure out how to balance all of those needs. And we will stay tuned and keep our hands to the plow, as my colleague just said. We are watching the changing numbers, and we'll try to focus as best we can on keeping everyone safe. I'd also like my colleagues in the community to know that I am continuing to work on the project of working on the John Lewis Academy, if at all possible. So I'd like to be able to bring that as a forum topic as soon as possible. So I'll be having conversations with my fellow board members and letting them know of the excitement that I continue to hear about in our community. Thank you so much.
Ms. Corbett-Sanders, followed by Ms. McLaughlin.
Thank you, Dr. Anderson. Like my colleagues, we've all been very busy and have had the opportunity to visit some of our schools. I had the opportunity to visit both the Key Center as well as Newington Forest. I've always been in awe and impressed by the quality of the work that is done in these locations. But during this unprecedented time, I have never been more proud of the work that our teachers, our staff, our principals, our administrators at Gatehouse have put in to make the experience for our students positive, and watching our students filled with joy as they participated in the classroom experiences was something that I will carry with me for the rest of my life, because it was a joy of, oh, I am so glad to be back in this building. And it's something that brought tears to my eyes to see the beauty of the learning experience for these children and the dedication and the innovation that our professionals in the classroom brought to that classroom, with a focus on the success for each and every one of the children in those classrooms. So I am indebted to them and am very grateful. I learned today that we will be doing a number of pilots in the Mount Vernon area, where Mount Vernon students attend, starting next week. These include West Potomac High School, Mount Eagle, and Lorton Station. And I look forward to visiting these locations to see how the various models are working. And I hope to do that prior to our work session next week. I also want to tell the community a little bit about what I'll be doing next week in addition to attending our work session, and that is I will be meeting with the Gartland Center Advisory Board, which is a human services board in the Mount Vernon region, and we will be discussing how we can collectively garner the supports of the school system, the county government, and the nonprofits, and how we can best support the social emotional needs of our students. And so I'm very much looking forward to that meeting next week. And once again, Dr. Brabrand, thank you for the ultimate professionalism of the teams that have made these return to school experiences for our students that are in schools positive and joy-filled.
Thank you, Ms. Corbett-Sanders. Ms. McLaughlin, followed by Ms. Dernak Kofax.
Thank you. I want to add to the comments my colleagues have shared about visiting our schools that have begun to pilot in-person learning. It was wonderful to join Laura Jane Cohen and Rachel Sizemore Heiser over at West Springfield High School to see their pilot. Mike Mukai, the principal, and his team are to be commended on what they're doing over there. Mike Mukai, we've said, could sell you a bridge in the desert, because he just brings such enthusiasm to all of his work and inspires us with his confidence in how we really can begin to safely return our students to in-person learning. Talking to those high school students and hearing from them firsthand, as Ms. Corbett-Sanders said, the joy of seeing one another, of physically being in each other's presence, was very powerful, and how much they said that just being in a classroom setting helped them feel like they could focus and learn more effectively, and to hear the teacher say how much he enjoyed being able to really see his students in person. I do want to say, in addition to our hardworking teachers and school-based staff, in particular, that are working every single day for our students with their virtual instruction, I want to also make sure we acknowledge and share our appreciation for our families. We are hearing so much about how our families are trying to support our students in this virtual setting, not just academically, but socially, emotionally. And I, as one board member, am very grateful that we know through research that family engagement in child's education is paramount to success. So thank you for all you're doing to continue investing in your children. Earlier this evening, we had an upset father who left the auditorium. He was concerned that in the citizen participation speeches that we weren't focusing on the return to school. And so I certainly want to reassure all of our families that this board, the superintendent and his team, we know how critical it is that we work through the COVID closures. We work for the safest way to return students to learning. And while we do have many important issues on the board's plate, it does not mean that we have lost focus on what is facing every single child here in the school district. So I do want parents to know that we hear you, and we promise you we will remain focused on that paramount importance. And then finally, Dr. Brabrand, I just want to say that 9 years on this board, I've talked to multiple superintendents about what it means when our first quarter ends, right when the early college application deadline occurs at the same time. And I saw 3 of my own kids go through it as well. I appreciate your sensitivity to it, because it's not just the students who get affected by it, but it's the teachers who are writing the recommendation letters, the guidance counselors who are also preparing the recommendation letters. And so we've wrestled with it in the past, how we can, every quarter doesn't always have to be exactly the same. And then I will also send you my thoughts about the fact that we used to, as a school division, tell our teachers 2 graded assessments per week, which was 18 per quarter. And under Karen Garza's leadership and this board's advocacy, we brought it down from 18 to 9, one a week, 9 and a quarter. I would absolutely say that when we look at maybe having a year-long grade book with markers for turning in work per quarter, but the grade book itself can average out across it, you will have less angst and anxiety about every quarter becomes locked and 25% of that average grade. So very pleased that you're doing that. And then just quickly, I want to shout out to my Braddock District families. For those of you who are veterans and celebrating veterans, the granddaughter, great-granddaughter, and the daughter of veterans, it's a very important holiday. And I honor you all, and thank you for your service.
Thank you, Ms. McLaughlin. Ms. Dana Koufax, followed by Ms. Marin, and then Mr. Frisch.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to say thank you. We are still in these challenging times for all of us, and to our teachers, our staff, our students. I thank you for your resilience. I thank you for your hard work and your understanding. We appreciate your grace as we work through these very challenging times. I have been doing some drop-in visits in our virtual classrooms at all levels, and I really have been impressed by the hard work, energy, and positivity exhibited by our teachers and our students. I have seen classrooms with attentive students, high energy, and very engaging lesson plans. So thank you all for that. I have not yet had the opportunity to visit any of our in-person pilot programs, but I hope to do so soon. However, I am concerned about the rising COVID cases. Today, the daily coronavirus cases in the U.S. hit a new daily high record. 114,876 cases happened today, and this is per Johns Hopkins University data. We must all stay informed to make our best decisions, and this is why at our last board meeting, I put forward a motion that was supported by by all of my colleagues, our entire board, to develop clearly defined metrics, directing our superintendent to develop clearly defined metrics that will dictate when our schools open or close. Dr. Brabrand promised that he would have this for our board at our November 12th meeting, and I look forward to seeing that. On the many issues that are before us now, I welcome public debate, but I also encourage respect for differing opinions, and I believe that by listening to each other and working together collectively and collaboratively, we can always yield the best results. Again, to our teachers and staff, I value your leadership. Your compassion and your love for your students is so evident, and thank you for all that you do. You all have my promise that the health and safety of our students, teachers, and families remain my top priority. We must reopen smart, following scientific guidelines that will protect the health and well-being of everyone. And finally, happy Veterans Day. Thank you to all who have served our country. We appreciate you so much. I am sorry I will not be there for the official celebrations that I have so enjoyed throughout the years, but I look forward to participating in many virtual ones. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Marin, followed by Mr. Frisch, and then Ms. Omesh.
Yes, I want to start my remarks by introducing a little bit of art here on the dais in front of me. These were made by a teacher, FCPS teacher at Wolf Trap Elementary, and it's part of her Slow Down Snail sort of campaign that she's started to remind ourselves to not constantly go so fast that we forget what it is we're trying to do. And so I think that that's really pertinent because the workload now is more important than ever. It's growing. It's you know, I'm trying to do the work of listening to the community, listening to staff, talking to people, finding solutions, and it's just an enormous task. So, you know, all this to say that as an elected official and a public servant, you know, I'm trying to listen, trying to do the regular work of the board, like being the chair of the budget committee, which is so important that we do the budget well, especially now in these fiscal times, to listen to our students, as Nathan said, but, you know, especially about homework, and trying to change things. And, you know, I think we have some nice opportunities as a silver lining to this awful situation to really revisit how we've done things in the past. And I just want to seize all those opportunities with my colleagues as much as I can to create the change that our community wants. I also have attended a concurrent pilot site and was very eager to see it, you know, being implemented. I have a lot of questions about data, and I'm eager to hear more on November 12th. And I also hosted an athletics town hall because we have so many parents who are concerned for their student athletes who know that, you know, students have worked so hard for years to get to that level of play, and that opens the doorway for their future in many cases, and just in terms of being healthy physically and emotionally. So I'm very pleased that the Virginia High School League did decide to go forward with keeping the start of the season. We are beholden to VHSL to have our season, and so December 7th, the basketball program will start with their practice, followed on December 14th for other sports. Now, of course, willing, as far as COVID is allowing us to do that, but it's really encouraging news. So, you know, I'm continuing to go to PTA meetings virtually, and I put a lot of effort into updates in my newsletter, The News You Choose, so please sign up for that for the 100 mil updates, and I'm just going to keep plugging at it. So thank you for your support and patience and input.
Mr. Frisch, followed by Ms. Omesh, and then Ms. Pekarsky.
Thank you. So over the last 2 weeks or so, I've met with about 24 Providence District principals to discuss return to school, the superintendent's plan for concurrent instruction. In these conversations, I've been pretty clear that, you know, my goal as a school board member is to be a collaborator and to try and make the best of the situation that we're in. And for me, that means working to address their ongoing concerns about health and safety, as well as staffing. So I know that we'll be getting into that in more detail at the next board meeting. And I look forward to working with our principals and our staff to make this new phase of return to school as smooth as possible. To that end, I'll be visiting 2 concurrent pilots in Providence District over the next few days, and I'll be eager to see our great staff at work in action. I'll be looking to see how what we see in this very controlled environments can be applied to the diversity of the classrooms we have across Fairfax County. So I'm looking forward to that, and I'm grateful for our staff making time for me in their schedules. Last week, I was able to meet with PTA leaders from the Falls Church Pyramid, and we had a good discussion about return to school and the progress on the Falls Church High School renovation, which everybody's excited about. We had some good news last week that the Safe Routes to School grant was approved for Shrevewood Elementary School, so we're excited about that. And last Friday, I was able to join Supervisor Dahlia Palchuk at the Dunloring Admin Center as we rolled out a giant new purple glass recycling bin. It is enormous, the size of a school bus, and it's serving Dunloring, Tysons, and the Falls Church area. You can't miss it. It's at Gallows and Idlewood. So I want to thank our supervisor for spearheading the collaboration between Fairfax County and the school system to get that done. And finally, this being our first meeting in person since March, I'd like to thank everybody for helping to put this together and make it happen. This month, by my calculation, I guess the last meeting was 25 years ago, with how long it's felt in person. But this month, I will pass the 300-hour mark in the time scheduled for one-on-one meetings with constituents over Zoom or phone. So if you're a resident of Providence District, and I see Teddy Geis, who's a constituent in Providence, who has made use of our office hours. If you're a constituent in Providence District, I encourage you to contact me and sign up, and we'll have a conversation about whatever it is that you'd like to talk about. I'm also grateful for my colleagues for making a very efficient use of our time in this first meeting back. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Frisch, Ms. Omesh, then Ms. Pekarsky, and then Ms. Sizemore-Heiser.
Thank you. I do want to start off by thanking our facilities staff, our clerks, our custodians, for everything they did to put this together today. It's certainly a gesture of solidarity with everyone within our system, our staff, our teachers, for us to be out here, and I hope that we'll continue to monitor conditions as we make decisions moving forward. I also want to congratulate all our students who have submitted their early applications to college. It is a huge step. And I know I've heard many of your anxieties and looking at essays and everything. I wish everyone the best and success in whatever outcomes do come out of that. I have been speaking to hundreds of you, our constituents, stakeholders, and I do want to also extend a huge thank you and gesture of empathy towards our staff, health and nutrition, our teachers, our IAs, principals, support staff of all kinds. The reality is that we know you're carrying a burden you never really signed up for. And I know oftentimes, that the idea that we're trying, that the system is working on it, that it's a crisis, the costs of communication and clarity aren't enough for you, and that's our job to correct. And I want to acknowledge that and really make sure that there's an understanding that our community is going through a tough time, and things are confusing and nerve-wracking for a lot of folks and families out there. But I want to remind us of a few things. One, that there will always be an opportunity to dial in and dial back, and that's a commitment. And I look forward to seeing what Ms. Daranack Koufax talked about earlier in terms of metrics as to how we determine that from our superintendent. And I know he's committed to the same, and our leadership team has been working on that. And that's an opportunity for us to reevaluate at any time and be mindful of what our stakeholders are experiencing and what's going on in our community. At the same time, I want to make sure that we also remember to take the time and space that's required for us to be able to care for ourselves in this process. The anxieties and the frustrations that have built over time, we all know this is a crisis, but this has turned out to be a protracted crisis. And so it's building on itself, and if we really don't take that moment to be self-reflective, I think we may harm our ability to come together and really bring everyone together as a community as we face this crisis as our common obstacle to overcome. Everyone over here is doing their best. Everyone out there, I know all of you, our staff, are doing their best to ensure the outcomes for our students are the best they can be. And at the end of the day, our common goal is to succeed. So I'm mindful that there are political anxieties out there. There's the social justice delays of many years and generations of causes that we have to look into and make sure that we take the opportunity when we can to bring about justice. And then, of course, there's the health situation we find ourselves in. These are all an opportunity for us to come together, to come up with the best solutions for our community moving forward. And I really would have been remiss not to have acknowledged today the unfortunate ways that this has turned political when it's not, because we're a community and we're one Fairfax, we're one FCPS, and I look forward to seeing the many ways we can collaborate to come up with solutions that are empathetic and innovative and data-based for our system moving forward. Finally, as you all know, I'm always available online. Every other Monday at 7 p.m. I have my live streams where you all have been making yourselves heard, and I've had a pleasure of engaging with you. So this coming Monday, our special topic is going to be about mental health and intersectional mental health at that. So I hope to see you all tuning in, and we're going to bring in a number of experts to try to speak to ways we can support one another during this time. But with that, I thank you for listening and look forward to coming up with solutions for everyone as we work together.
Thank you. Ms. Pekarsky, then Ms. Sizemore-Heiser, then Ms. Tolan.
Okay, thank you. It's wonderful to see all my colleagues in the flesh and leadership staff. It has been a very long time. I did have the opportunity to host a town hall this past month with Ms. Sizemore-Heiser, and I know we're working on another one, so please be on the lookout for that and join us. And thank you for the many emails and voicemails and sharing your stories and your concerns. I have to say that as we celebrate Veterans Day, I'd like to send a special appreciation to my colleague, Dr. Anderson, who is also a veteran. So her commitment to community service predates this board. So thank you, Dr. Anderson. You know, this is such a difficult time, I know, for our families, for our teachers, for everyone involved, and everybody is working so hard, whether at home with your children or in the classrooms, or trying to come up with the plans to you know, really innovate education during this time. And I think I was elected, and my commitment was to continue to prioritize the needs of children, and to do so using really the best data and the best guidance out there. And while I'm not a public health expert, there are many out there who have opinions and data about our students and school, and I will continue to look towards them as we figure out these difficult times. I also had the opportunity to visit a concurrent model at Brookfield, and I'm very appreciative to the principal there, Ms. Mukai, who is a brand new principal. She had been there, I mean, what, a month and a half, 2 months before she jumped into this pilot. So it was wonderful to see that in action, and I'm very thankful to her and to everybody who has just jumped right in to best meet the needs of our students this year.
Thank you, Ms. Pekarsky. Ms. Sizemore-Heiser, then Ms. Tolan.
Thank you. I appreciate it, and I'm glad to follow along with Ms. Pekarsky. And first, I just want to say, I did not realize that. Dr. Anderson, thank you for your service. As a former military spouse, I understand the sacrifices our military families make, so I want to say Happy Veterans Day. And I also want to say congratulations to the class of 2021 for getting in those early college applications. That's a huge accomplishment in any year, but especially this year and the challenges that you've had. So I would be remiss without recognizing our great seniors this year. I also want to thank the hard work of our staff, our teachers, Dr. Brabrand, his leadership team, for all the tireless work they've done, and many emails that they've answered from us and our constituents and our families and our teachers, and the patience everybody has shown in trying to make the best of this situation, for not only creating a strong virtual instruction model, but also working to bring our students back in. I know how hard our teachers are working and how burnt out they are. I know they didn't sign up to teach like this, and many of them feel like first-year teachers or first-year administrators. And I know that's hard, and I care, and I'm grateful. I'm also grateful for our families and the sacrifices they have made, those who've had to quit their jobs, As a special ed parent who had to quit my job to take care of my special ed kid, I know how you feel. I've lived this life for 15 years. I get it. It's tough, and it's tough when society doesn't have the supports that you need for your family. And what this has taught me, this pandemic, is just how vitally important our schools are for our children. We are truly the social safety net. We provide food, we provide mental wellness, we provide social emotional support and academics, and it is hard to do that during a pandemic, so I appreciate everybody's hard work. Health and safety is paramount, it always will be, but it's also nuanced and complicated. I've always been committed to data and science, and I'm also committed to listening to all of our families, our teachers, our principals and staff, holding my town halls, to try to balance the needs in a time when no one knows and no one has any balance. So here's the thing. This pandemic has made it clear that nobody has the right answer, and nobody has a good answer. So, yeah, every plan that we put out there has problems, but there are no good options. We've got to stop looking for the good option, and we've got to make the best of these bad options. That's how I feel. It takes all of us to do that. I've been touring concurrent pilots. I encourage everybody to go look at West Springfield. Mike Mukai there, I echo what my colleague said. He's amazing, and it really, concurrent is not optional, is not ideal, but it's what we have. Nothing is ideal. What is ideal is if we can all come together to make this the best that we can. It's incumbent on the adults in the room to do the heavy lifting here. I know our teachers have been doing that heavy lifting. I know our families have been doing that heavy lifting, but so have our students. I want to thank Mr. Anabudo for putting student wellness at the center, and that's what I've been trying to do since I ran for this office. Keep centered those who most need that voice. We all are tired. None of us have strength anymore, but we really can't, and Mr. Anabudo said, keep expecting strength from battered children and adolescents. We have to be the adults in the room. We cannot keep expecting our students to sacrifice for us. I know our teachers are trying. I know our parents are trying. I know the passions and fears run high. We are all traumatized. But we must not forget that our children are traumatized too. So please, let's make the best of these bad times, and let's make the best of these bad options for our students. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Tolan.
Yes, good evening. That's a hard act to follow. As we finish up our first quarter, I definitely want to thank all of our families for working so hard to make virtual learning the best possible for our students. And a huge thank you to our staff at all levels as well. I know you have all worked so hard to make virtual learning be the best that it can be, and to make the recent transitions to in-person learning as safe and as educational as possible, while keeping our students fed and transporting them to schools as needed. Thank you, thank you. I have paid visits to a number of virtual classes: Langley High School, Herndon Middle School, Coburn Run Elementary, McLean High School, Longfellow, Franklin Sherman, etc., and have been really impressed at the work that the teachers are doing with the students, and what the students are doing in all of those classes as well. I've been very impressed. And I'm going to continue doing this just to get a better sense of what a day is really like for our students and for our teachers. I also want to commend our schools over this first quarter for doing an incredible job trying to reach out and find every single student and to get them engaged. I was really amazed. I want to call out Herndon Middle School when I heard the stories about the administrators getting onto the buses all masked up and traveling through Herndon to look up every child that hadn't been logging in to virtual learning. I cannot commend our staff enough for really reaching out to everyone. I've been working with some of our community leaders, the Safe Community Coalition, to work with our PTA leaders across Drainesville to discuss common priorities and needs and see how we can work collaboratively to help our community. The meetings have gone really well, and we have decided to do this quarterly to keep our PTA members and leaders involved. I'm continuing my office hours, and I really want to thank all of the TJ families that have reached out to me with information and stories and ideas. That has been super helpful. And I have one of my favorite constituents that calls me periodically on my office hours. She's a kindergartner, and she keeps me up with what's happening with her virtual learning experiences. And it's absolutely fantastic to hear her perspective. I was on the other end of the spectrum. I met with students at one of our Dranesville high schools, and really appreciated all of their input too on how virtual learning is going for them, what's working, what's not working, et cetera, and ideas that they had for improvements for second quarter. I was at Colvin Run Elementary School today to see the concurrent learning site that they have there, and they're doing this with kindergartners, so some of our youngest learners. And there was a group of school-based technology specialists coming through throughout the whole day to observe what was happening there. So I really want to give staff a huge thank you for helping our entire county learn about at least one way that we can productively teach our students as they're moving back into the classroom. And we're dealing with our hybrid learning situation. Thank you so much for your creativity and all of your hard work. I'm reconvening some work that I've been doing with John Faust's office next week with some members of the McLean Citizens Association to really be looking at overall data in our Tysons area and what the development there, what kind of impacts it'll have on the capacity of our nearby schools. So stay tuned for that. Checking in with our Dranesville principals and hearing about their plans for getting students into our buildings. And they are working so hard, so please be patient with them as they're balancing the needs of our families and our staff the very best ways that they can, to make the transition into school as smooth as possible. And lastly, I would like to say happy Veterans Day and happy Veterans Day celebrations for all of our schools. I'm excited to learn about how much our schools do for Veterans Day, and was pleased to interview a veteran that was involved in the Cuban Missile Crisis for a video from McLean High School. So happy Veterans Day to all of you veterans, and to the students that will be learning about why that day is so important. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Tolan. I will now take a turn, but I will not be long because I do realize I'm what stands between us and our cars at this point. I will disagree with Mr. Frisch on one item, which is it hasn't been 25 years since we've been here. It feels like 100. We all are a little bit grayer, a little bit more tired, just a little bit more weary for what we have been handling. And it's not just our students, our families, our teachers, but it's also us, our leadership team. These folks have been working so hard, and I do want to take a moment to really emphasize that. It's been multiple hours since pretty much March 11th, 16, 17-hour days, always making themselves available to do the right work for the students of Fairfax County. And for that, I'm appreciative, because I do have 2 students in this district, and I'm able to see their work day in, day out. I see the efforts of our teachers to ensure that they have a good experience. And I know we're working towards returning our students back into schools safely, but I do want to start off by saying I'm appreciative of all of your work, of our leadership team, our teachers, our staff, our custodians, our bus drivers, our food and nutrition services employees who are out there each and every single day ensuring that our students with the highest needs are met. So thank you for that. I also want to say thank you to Dr. Issa, the principal at Bailey's Elementary, who is retiring after a number of years and relocating to Florida. You will be missed dearly at Bailey's Lower, And thank you so much for all of your leadership. Clearly, we've received a lot of communication in the past few months regarding a number of issues, returning to school, TJ admissions, renaming of schools. It's been a lot, and we thank you for sharing your thoughts and your advocacy and your suggestions with us. We do read all of the letters, even though there are hundreds and hundreds at a time. But I do want to highlight a set of letters that I've received as of late, which really have made my day. Probably receive about 20 or so letters from students at Belvedere Elementary wanting to acknowledge this board's work in terms of recognizing Indigenous Peoples Day. They were so touching and heartwarming from 5th grade students at Belvedere, and I thank you for taking the time and for the teacher to facilitate that. It was the right work to do, and I'm very grateful that the teacher actually took the time to ensure that our students did not just know it was just a date on our calendar, but why this is a date that we need to honor and to recognize, similarly to our efforts regarding Juneteenth. I do want to say thank you to Dr. Zuluaga for helping facilitate multiple school visits for me at both our elementary schools, our middle schools, and our high schools. I see the hard work that is at play, and I see all of the work that our teachers are doing to ensure that our kids are engaged. So thank you for that. And again, I see it. I have to do this, give a special shout out to the teachers at Mason Crest Elementary and Glasgow, because I see the work each and every day as I watch my children. I'm one of those parents, Ms. McLaughlin, who's right there hawking and attempting to support, to be IT support, tech support, cry support, because sometimes it's there as well. It's hard for our students to do this day in, day out. I also want to say, while I'm very grateful for all the work that is happening, I do want to highlight that in Mason District, we do have some inequities. We have some things that are not like the rest of the Fairfax County. We have our 6th graders who are on different schedules. We have our 6th graders who are in our middle schools. That is an inequity that I would like for us to address. That was on the list, but we do know that we have more pertinent things to address, but I don't want to forget that that's one of them. I do want to say thank you to all of my colleagues. Today took a lot to make happen. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for your patience and your flexibility so that we can have our meetings here in person. And thank you again to our clerks who were so instrumental in making this happen. They met with so many people and worked tirelessly to ensure that we had a very smooth first meeting back, even after 100 years. The last comment that I do want to make, I want to appreciate the Mason District schools that are piloting the concurrent model. We have had many, many positive comments from parents who are sharing how grateful their students were from having just been in the school building and having the opportunity to engage with friends and to see their teachers for the first time in person. While I'm grateful for those efforts, I still want to reiterate, we have to return our students to school, but we have to do this in a safe way for everyone. And so I'm looking forward to continuing those conversations. And those are my comments for this evening. It is now 9:43, and our meeting is adjourned.